So in the last lesson we looked at, step 5 in the habitat study process, we looked at identifying consumers. And consumers are, as we said, organisms that they basically eat other organisms for food. And there's the different types of consumers that we have, and then we have predator and prey. Now, within step 6 then, so step 6 really what we need to do in step 6 is we want to identify these things called decomposers. So step 6. And that's you identify the decomposers. So decomposers. So if we think of something decomposing, we can think of it breaking down or going off. And that's essentially what it means. Like if we take, for example, like this time of the year now, we're starting to go into the winter, you're going to see loads and loads of leaves, for example, on the ground. So imagine this is your tree, and these are the branches of the tree. Okay, and you're going to get loads of these leaves that are going to kind of build up on the ground. Now, over time, what's going to happen is these will essentially decompose. So they will essentially disappear, and some of the nutrients and carbon and stuff will go back into the ground, and some parts of it will go into the environment as well. But what is it that causes these leaves, for example, to decompose? Well, we have these organisms that are called decomposers, and some common decomposers that we have. So we have bacteria. So these are some of the decomposers. So you have bacteria. So bacteria are these tiny microorganisms. In some cases, they're just like single-celled organisms. They're very, very small. And what they do is they will land on the leaves, and they will start to break down the leaves. And they'll start to extract food out of the leaves and essentially break it down. So the bacteria will take in some of the food, but they'll output waste that will be absorbed into the ground or put off into the air, like, for example, carbon dioxide. So bacteria are examples of decomposers. We have fungi. Or fungi, as some people pronounce it. So again, fungi are things like mushrooms. So you have these mushrooms. So things like mushrooms will be example of fungi. And they have this like complicated structure underneath the ground, and this is called mycelium. And basically what this structure does is it can come into contact with the leaves and things, and it can start to break it down and essentially eat the leaves or decompose the leaves. Then you have other organisms. So for example, you have things like woodlice. So they're kind of like these kind of weird looking kind of things. You'd see them. They kind of look like that. So they're woodlice, and again, what they do is they decompose or they break down. You know, they can break down things like leaves and things like that. You also have there's certain beetles. So there's certain beetles that are known as decomposers as well, and then also then as well, let's say under the ground, then you have, for example, these earthworms. And basically, earthworms, they take in the soil, they process it, and they also help to create channels in the ground that helps, for example, that helps water and other substances to move around underneath the ground as well. So again, there's a link between all of these different organisms, and decomposers are very, very important, because what they do is they help to decompose and get rid of, like, for example, dead matter. Definition then for decomposers, like an official kind of definition. So decomposers, let's right up here. So what are decomposers? So again, they're organisms. So organisms are living things. So for example, these guys, bacteria, fungi, woodlice, and beetles, they're living things. So they're organisms that break down dead plants and animals into materials. So they break it down into materials that can go back into the soil. So that's your definition of these decomposers. So again, you know, the bacteria, they're going to eat the plants, they're going to break them down, and the waste that they produce will go back into the ground. And that's what they do. So essentially, these decomposers, they're like the garbage men of nature. So they get rid of the rubbish. If we didn't have decomposers, you know, when animals die, for example, their bodies wouldn't break down or decompose. The reason why an animal's body breaks down and decomposes after it dies is because these organisms, so for example, bacteria, they're everywhere. They're present everywhere, and they need the same things that we need in order to live. They need nutrients, and they will get their nutrients from dead material, for example. And that's what like decomposers are. So within an environment, there are going to be different types of decomposers within a habitat, and they're going to, again, remember, when we think about organisms living within a community, they carry out a vital service within that community. They keep the overall, they have their own little niche in that they get rid of dead matter or dead material, and they basically break it down, and they recycle it into the habitat so that it can be used in some kind of useful ways as well. But again, without these decomposers, they carry out, you know, their, you know, this, if you like, the rubbish of nature wouldn't be got rid of and decomposed. And again, with decomposers as well, there's different kind of keys that you can use. So for example, if you find a mushroom within your habitat, you can use a key in order to be able to identify the particular species of mushrooms that you're looking at. And it's the same kind of process that we looked at in relation to the other types of organisms within a habitat. So that's step 6 within the habitat study process, and this is what's known as where you're identifying these things called decomposers that decompose material or dead matter within the ecosystem. Okay, so thank you for listening.